welcome everybody this morning. So we are going to discuss the Grossmont Safe and Clean project, and hopefully this is, obviously of interest to you folks, but also helps you in some of your planning for where we go beyond this. This initiative was brought together through the Grossmont Cooperating Association in consultation with the local communities and local businesses. So the Grossmont Co-op is actually a Friends of the Park network, which are in partnership with the Grossmont National Park. There are a few of these across the country, but I will say none act in the way that the co-op acts, in the way that it helps this region move forward beyond just working with Parks Canada. They work integrated with the community and with the businesses to help them move forward. Here you actually see the four arms of the co-op. So Jonathan being the executive director of GMIST, or the Grossmont Institute of Sustainable Tourism. They develop projects like what we're doing right now, the Sandbox, but they also have their signature series, Edge of the Wedge, which typically would take place in April and October in Grossmont, but currently is on hiatus. We have our tourism best practices, which allows for tourism operators from Atlantic Canada to venture outside of Atlantic Canada and see some of the best beyond, and hopefully bring that knowledge and information back home as well. And Jonathan helps oversee that. We have Nora, who works with Creative Gros Morne, of which has a significant impact with the local arts and culture community in Gros Morne, and with this specific artists throughout the community to help elevate ourselves on a national and international level. And then you have Grossmont Gatherings, which I'll speak a little bit to later, but that is a group of 7 accommodators that supply a levy revenue to help market the region as a whole. So the Cooperating Association is a not-for-profit, and again, it is dedicated to supporting the heritage protection and presentation mandate of Parks Canada, but is highly integrated with the communities and the businesses. So I'll throw it over to Nora.
Thanks, Ian. Here we go. I just want to make sure I was able to move to the next slide here. So we're going to talk about the Grossmont Safe and Clean program, and I'm going to sort of talk a little bit mostly about the community piece and phase 1 of, I'll call phase 1 of the program, and then Ian's going to talk a little bit further about next phases. But just to kind of give you an overview, really the goal here was to provide, as Jonathan said, some reassurance that COVID-19 safety protocols were being taken seriously and followed. And this really came as the Atlantic bubble was opening last July. And as similar to other parts of Atlantic Canada, in Newfoundland and Labrador, and certainly in the Grossmont region, our demographic makeup is quite similar. So we skew to a little bit of an older demographic. So that causes some concern in terms of COVID-19 vulnerabilities. And also we were seeing cases continuing to grow rapidly. And at that time, there were still lots of unknowns. There's still lots of unknowns now, but certainly back in early summer, there was a little bit of anxiety, and we wanted to provide a bit of reassurance around that. So to do this, we worked closely in partnership with the 7 communities within the Grossmont region. We really felt that a collective effort was really important to try to be coordinated to build some momentum and some buy-in, but also because we recognize that municipalities often have limited resources and capacity. So to be able to assist them in providing that assured environment and to provide a welcoming environment, we thought was really important to work together. And overall, we really wanted to emphasize the idea of health and safety being a shared responsibility, wanting to provide the reassurance for visitors, but also for residents to make sure that we're following protocols and we're doing what we need to be safe. Reminding patrons to businesses to be patient, to follow the protocols like directional signage that we're all used to now, to be respectful of limits on capacity in terms of gatherings and also capacity in spaces. And also to encourage people just to be aware of these changes and that there could be things like increased wait times at a specific operator or at a restaurant or something like that. So the process that we followed, really the idea kind of grew out of some weekly informal meetings that some of the operators and organizations within the region were having, and those were actually organized by Ian. And we used to meet via Zoom, mostly on Friday afternoons, and just to kind of talk about what had happened during the week, sharing any news that we had heard. Some people shared examples from other destinations of things that other destinations were doing or considering. And from that conversation, the discussion started about setting up some sort of a standard and setting up some kinds of protocols for the region around COVID-19 safety. And that's kind of where the Grossmont Safe and Clean idea grew from. And then we did some brainstorming among the Grossmont Co-op staff, and we talked about some creative ways to bring this initiative to life. And then from there, we had an initial meeting to talk about this idea and to try to get some buy-in and explain what it was we were thinking of to key municipal officials such as mayors and town clerks and other partners like Parks Canada, just to kind of talk about the overall concept. We did quite a bit of scanning of provincial information. There's lots of information out there, and we wanted to kind of bring all that together into one spot so that we could easily access it and be able to share that with each other. We developed a communications plan and some key communication pieces, and we'll talk a bit about that shortly. And then from there, we had another meeting with those key municipal and partner organizations to talk about the phase 1 launch, to clarify any questions, and essentially just to give everybody a chance to feel comfortable with where we were going with it. And then we moved into our launch phase. So in consideration of phase 1, one of the things, these are some of the things that we really gave quite a bit of thought to. One thing we wanted to do was to create something that was recognizable. So something visible, something easy for people to see and understand. We needed to cut through the clutter a little bit. Lots of posters and notices being posted around, but people were getting a little overwhelmed, and sometimes there was so much of it that people maybe weren't even seeing it or reading it. So we really wanted something recognizable. We wanted something that would be sustainable and be adaptable for future years. Even back last summer, there was a recognition that this was going to be around for a while. So we wanted something that we could reuse year to year, and something that was somewhat mobile, so that if we were doing events and things like that, that we were able to use some of these items for those types of events. We wanted something that was easy to promote and to maintain. We also wanted to be able to clearly communicate the message, but also be a little bit whimsical at the same time. So something that would grab some attention. We wanted to appeal to all audiences, so families, children, adults, and of course to residents and to visitors. And we wanted to fit the image of a national park region. So something that spoke to the idea of nature, exploring, having fun, those kinds of things. And really the overarching message here was kind of creating a sense of what you can do versus all these messages around things that you can't do. So phase 1 launched in late July of 2020, and phase 1, really the key thing in this phase was the installation of these colorful birdhouses. And each of the 7 communities installed 5 birdhouses at locations of their choice. And the municipalities really were able to look at, which areas did they feel were maybe highly visited, such as a playground, or key areas like a trailhead where people would be entering to do an activity. Really, and some even chose their town hall because those were areas that were being frequently visited. So we designed them to be able to hold a 1-liter pump bottle of hand sanitizer. And we gave this quite a bit of thought because we wanted it to be really easy. We wanted people to just see it and know exactly what it was and be able to use it without, spilling or making it, having kids maybe pump it and spray it all over the place. So we really tried to make it as easy as possible. And we also added this cute little message here: remember to wash your wings, from your friends in Grossmont. So again, simple, speaks to the natural environment, but also a reminder of how important hand sanitizing is in the prevention of the spread of COVID-19. And when it came to installing the birdhouses, you can see here that the birdhouses were created to be able to be installed in a bunch of different ways. So they could be installed on a railing, at the entrance of a trail, for example, on the side of a building. And we also had some of these colorful stands. So if it was being placed somewhere where there maybe wasn't something to easily attach it to, it could be attached to those stands. And again, they were colorful as well. So again, to draw attention. The communities took on the responsibility for the ongoing maintenance and the upkeep of the birdhouses. And when the installation happened, it was kind of a collective effort between the co-op and the communities. And that really created a bit of a sense of ownership, and people kind of got really into this idea of figuring out where to place them and being involved in the installation of them. And as you can see, we had lots of photos being taken, which was really, really great.
Nora, can you talk to, because one of the things that I thought was really cool, I mean, when we went into this construction of these birdhouse pieces, we were under the reality of the situation that this was more of a psychological piece than an actual, putting enough out there to, make sure people could sanitize their hands all over the park. But one of the key things, if you could talk about it from that angle, the importance of that psychological side of things, because at this point in time, it was impossible to get pump bottles. It was impossible to get hand sanitizer. It was one of those really interesting pieces around the psychology of it and the value of using your sort of artistic eye to do these things versus just putting a pump bottle out on a stand.
Yeah, I think coming up with this, I mean, collectively, we all kind of had our input here, and we've got quite a creative staff member, Kim, who works with me on the creative file, and she was able to come up with the colors. And you can see, if you look closely on some of the photos, you can see some of them have like hearts or little birds and things like that. So just trying to be a little bit whimsical, have a bit of fun with it. The reminder to wash your wings. Again, just that visual for people. It wasn't a big announcement with a whole bunch of words and text on it, just to get people in the mindset that this is something they needed to be aware of. But also, I think a reminder as well for residents that, they were going to see some people, we didn't know how many at that time, going to see some people coming around town, but, these were a way to kind of just increase that awareness, give people a bit of a comfort level, and really kind of build on that idea of getting out in the outdoors. And we see that even now, probably even more important now than we did back then, of encouraging people to get out and do some activities. And even if there were things that were closed, encouraging them to get outside, do the trails, do those things that were available to them. So I think it really kind of brightened the outlook for people, just because they were, so visible and so colorful, and people started talking about it. And I remember going to a few places and people were kind of pointing them out, have you seen the birdhouses? So I think it did give people really a visual cue and something that they could kind of take ownership of, which was really good. I just want to talk a little bit about the communication pieces, and I do have a few examples that I'll show you as well. But one of the items that we created, in addition to the birdhouses and the wash your wings little pieces, was an information poster. And these were printed again in colorful, with colors and bright colors to attract attention. And we just printed a limited number. And again, those were handed to the municipalities to allow them to choose places that they felt were appropriate. So whether that was, the window of a popular store or their town hall, or we really left it to their judgment to kind of know places where people would be frequenting. And those posters were done in a way that it was a message, basically a collective message from the mayors of the towns. And we also created some PDFs of that letter from the mayor content, so that the municipalities could use that to post as a PDF within their town hall, or to share on social media or website. So if they wanted to share that messaging through other channels, they could do that as well. We also compiled a list of frequently asked questions. And the idea here was to try to pull together some of that abundance of information that was out there to save a bit of time. So if municipalities were getting calls or emails, it made a quick little reference tool for them to be able to just kind of grab that information and pass on the link or pass on the information. We also did a media release around the launch of the birdhouses, and that was prepared by the co-op, and we circulated that to local media. And we included a quote from one of the mayors as a representative of the group as well. We also created some public service announcements, and those were to be circulated really over time. So the first one coincided with the birdhouse launch, but then we also had some other messaging around wearing masks and physical distancing and things like that that carried on for the next few weeks. And then Ian's going to get into a little bit more about visitgrossmorne.com website, but we also made sure there was some information in a separate section on that website around the whole Grossmont Safe and Clean initiative that allowed people to get more details if they were interested and to have those details available publicly. I just wanted to show you a couple quick screenshots of some of the social media. So the one in the middle here is the Visit Grossmont social media site, which is managed by the co-op. And this is where we posted pictures from the different municipalities of the birdhouse installation. And you can see some of the other communities, the town of Glen Burnie, Birchie Head, Showbrook, and town of Trout River, also were sharing pictures of their birdhouses and where those were located so that people would know, you know, which viewpoints or which entry points that those birdhouses were being installed at. And Parks Canada also shared some of this information as well. And they shared, I believe at one point they shared a list of where all of the birdhouses were located, which was great to be able to get the word out as well. And this one just shows the poster that I mentioned, and I've split it into two pieces here. It was just one single poster, but I split it into two because I didn't want the font to be too small. But as you can see, it kind of outlines some of the measures that were being taken throughout the Grossmont region, and it was signed from the mayors of the Grossmont region, as I mentioned. And really, we felt that was really important because it was a collective message from all the municipalities, but also even if people didn't read the entire thing, if they just noticed that it was signed by the mayors, it kind of just added that level of a little bit of weight to that, you know, to say this is a message that is being put out from the municipalities. And if we're a visitor, we feel welcome here. If we're a resident, we feel that we've been doing some things to try to ensure a safe environment. It also's got some of the questions, and on the bottom we included social media links and a link to the Visit Grossmont website, just in case people did want to see a bit further information or kind of see what other things were happening. But again, you can see it's got the vibrant colors, kind of reflective of the birdhouse theme as well. And these are just some of the frequently asked questions. We provided a fair bit of detail in terms of the answers to these questions, but just to zone in on a few of the key things that we wanted to be able to share with all the partners. One is what is open in Grossmont. So as we know, there were certain facilities and certain attractions that were and weren't open in the summer of last year. So this was a link to a site, which you'll see in a little while, which featured exactly which things were open and when, and talked about hours of operation and those sorts of things. We also talked about which Parks Canada facilities were open and available, because in the national park area, of course, that's really important. And we wanted to make sure that municipalities were able to access the up-to-date Parks Canada information as well. What is the current alert level in Newfoundland and Labrador? And all provinces sort of have a different, I guess, way of communicating the alert level. Here in Newfoundland and Labrador, we use a 1 to 5 numbered system. So just to make sure that if people did have a question, they could click and see exactly which alert level we're in at the time and which regulations apply to that alert level. And then, of course, what should a person do if they feel ill or have questions about potential exposure to COVID-19? At that time, the numbers in this province were still relatively low, particularly in our region. So just to give people, again, that quick reference to say, you know, what if I do feel sick? Should I be getting a test, or who should I be speaking to? And then the last sort of communication piece I just wanted to share was the public service announcement. And this is just one example. We just tried to create here sort of a simple template. The service announcements all kind of had the same format, the same look, with the Grossmont Safe and Clean logo. The first section and the last section stayed consistent throughout. So the first section just talking about that partnership with the communities, and the last section with the reminder about washing your wings, and the Visit Grossmont website as a reference. And then that middle section basically was whatever the key message of that PSA was. So in this one, for example, it talked about mandatory masks. And we had initially developed a PSA around wearing masks, but once it became mandatory, then we adjusted it and shared this on the social media channels and with partners so that people were aware that masks were mandatory as of August 24th, and to make sure that you're wearing your mask in public spaces and also following physical distancing guidelines. So I'm going to pass it over to Ian, unless there's any questions you want to talk about before that.
Anybody have anything they want to ask? Unmute yourself if you want, or. Cool. All right, Ian.
Okay, sounds good. Can you hear me good there?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the business side of things. So clearly we had done a significant amount of work in strategically working with the communities. And it was very much a psychological impression that we were hoping to have the communities feel a little bit more welcoming. Everyone on the call here is from within Atlantic Canada. We had heard of, you know, people coming from outside the region, certain regions, and you know, being told to go home or whatnot. And we really wanted to build that comfort level within, so that the communities and the residents trusted us and trusted that while as a business in this area, you know, we're trying to drive traffic and get visitors because we need to try to survive, we also have to work in harmony with those communities. So, you know, there's a real balance there. And I feel that in year one, we did focus primarily on a lot of the community aspect of it and kind of relating to what was open. And so I'll speak a little bit about that as we, and what we'll be doing to progress into to 2021 and probably 2022 with this project. So part of it is funded through Grossmont gatherings. And if you want to flip to the next slide, I'm there clicking my button, realizing Nora has control of that. So Grossmont gatherings, as I had mentioned before, does a number of things for the region in terms of marketing and helping to promote the region, whether it's through trip itineraries, through the Newfoundland Labrador travel guide, through sponsorship of fam tours, or through travel trade shows. One of the things that they do look after is the Visit Grossmont website. So this is a not-for-profit website. It is not a pay-to-play sort of website, so it is free for anyone that any business that operates within Grossmont to get exposure on it. It primarily is used for people that are trip planning on the ground. So one of the key things it has is an activity calendar, which lists all the different activities for each day in the park. So a lot of people do use this as a tool beyond using just like the Newfoundland and Labrador tourism website. So for us, it is obviously great to have some funding that comes through Grossmont gatherings. And again, Visit Grossmont is managed through those folks. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate, that's the process that we had to enable us to have a website like Visit Grossmont. If you'd like to flip to the next one. Okay, so primarily as businesses, we kind of looked at, okay, we really want to make sure that our visitors are adhering to the safety protocol and making our community members and residents feel comfortable. But we also wanted to make sure that other operators, not just a specific one here and there, but all operators were feeling comfortable if they were to recommend another operator or partner for a package, which of course this summer a lot of operators did try and partner to deliver experiences in a reduced capacity. So for us, it was looking at things like partnering. It's also looking at how do we move forward and work with things like the travel trade operators and build a level of trust with those folks as they look at many new operators that have entered the region. So how do they know the differences, and how do they know that these new operators are taking things seriously or even going above and beyond? Again, trying to drive guest traffic to the operators that were adhering to what was being done or going above and beyond. So the intent was to work within the Grossmont region and look at it as we were exceeding some of the basic recommendations for health and safety guidelines in the province, and therefore these operators would get some additional promotion. So there's 4 steps to this process for business to become safe and clean certified. At the time, I will mention that Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador and all of the tourism associations, respective tourism associations in Atlantic Canada, brought in the Clean It Right program, which was purchased through Tourism Manitoba. And so this was happening at the same time. So we kind of looked at, okay, what did Clean It Right do, and what could our certification do for our region that was a little bit more zoned in on what our needs were. So for us, we looked at this summer was very interesting in the way that obviously in Newfoundland and Labrador, we didn't have a Tourism Establishment Act that I guess, allowed for every operator that was operating to actually be licensed. So one of the key things that we did say was, okay, we would like to have all of our operators licensed. So that meant that they were registered with the Provincial Tourism Association, or registered with the province, sorry, and that they would have already met the proper health and safety standards, meaning fire safety, health safety, insurance, so on and so forth. So that really legitimized a lot of the businesses, but it also pushed some out, or possibly encourage them to become licensed operators, as we would like to see that happen in the future. So if you were a business that was licensed, you already had check mark on number 1. Part 2 was about having your staff take the Clean It Right training with the goal of increasing safety for guests and visitors, and the workplace, of course, in the tourism, hospitality, and retail industry. So if you were licensed, you were able to freely do this Clean It Right program through Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador. And again, this is available for all provinces in Atlantic Canada. This is, you do need to score 100% on this program. It does take about an hour to complete, and you do need all of your staff to complete it. But again, it is not about how to clean things. It is a little bit more on the psychology and the mindset of putting safety of guests and visitors in the forefront, and also looking after yourself as staff members and doing things for the right reasons. So if you completed that, which was fairly simple to get completed, many operators are looking at doing that for this spring, as that program will be offered for free throughout this spring. One of the things that we've noted, or I've noticed along the way, is that some of the protocol in the Clean It Right program is a bit dated. Of course, you know, the way things have moved and progressed with COVID-19 restrictions, some things have changed. So currently, it's listed in there that if you had an accommodations, you should leave the room vacant the day before and the day after the guest comes and visits. That was a recommendation. It's not mandatory. So they're looking at adjusting some of their programs based on some of the feedback that we've currently given for the Clean It Right program. So that's been a really good line of communication there. So this program hopefully will have some adjustments for this spring in time for summer, for training for guests, or training for staff. Also, we want to make sure that our guests and staff are safe, and we want to make sure it's top of mind. So your staff would actually make sure, or they would actually complete a COVID-19 staff checkup prior to working. So it's, you know, the typical things that would be asked in terms of, you know, have you been in contact? Do you have any signs or symptoms? Anything like that. So very simple. And the intent for this is to actually have this done online, so that it doesn't become cumbersome and there's a lot of paperwork, but can be done online, and the files can be stored through the cloud. The last point was that looking at guests completing pre-arrival forms for those that were scheduled on tour offers. So this is a little bit more geared towards travel trade, I will say, or for those operators that are offering full day or multi-day experiences with guests that will be coming likely from outside of the bubble. Given the new variant, this is a ever evolving part of this program, and partly why it hasn't been fully completed at this point, and will still roll out for this summer, is that we currently have to look at variants and what new protocol might be for that and what the risks might be. Last summer, what a form did look like was asking kind of what airports would you have had to have come through, more specifically just being able to connect the dots of where our guests were coming from, asking if they had left their home province. So if you were coming to Grossmont, had you left Nova Scotia prior to coming to visit us, or had you been exposed to anyone that might have had COVID during that time? Did you show any signs and symptoms, anything like that? So these were forms that a guest could complete usually 24 hours in advance before departure or before arrival. So that gave you a good idea of what to expect. Generally last summer, it felt like, or well, all operators agreed that it was very much traveling within bubbles. So then at least you could pre-plan for that bubble and not have to worry about the interaction with other guests. So this form was just an added check for you. And I will say it definitely made for guests that were coming for any kind of multi-day experience a little bit more comfortable and reassured. Myself as a tour operator, we sent out these forms and we weren't sure how guests were going to receive them, if they were going to be, you know, a little apprehensive, but all the guests came back and said they were really, really happy to see the level of professionalism, but the level of also taking it serious and wanting to make sure that the guests were going to be safe and that we were looking after our staff as well. So that was really, really appreciated. Part of having this as well, so there we go, the next slide. Part of having this sort of certification, once you meet those 4 key criteria, you'll actually be given a sticker that will go in your window. It's a little bit larger than, say, a TripAdvisor sticker or whatnot, but large enough with the colors, and that would allow guests as they walk by to have a better understanding of who was certified and who was not, or who was going above and beyond. Again, the operators that have and will complete the certification will be promoted. So we will have it branded this spring to go out a bit more about what the program is about, what it means to be certified, and so that guests have a better idea of what sort of operators are top of mind and taking this seriously and going above and beyond. Last year, one of the other big questions was what was open. As Nora had mentioned previously, we wanted to let our guests know what was open. Not everybody will quickly jump onto your tourism website and adjust their hours, and I believe the ladies with Newfoundland Tourism, Bev and you folks, it was definitely not an easy summer to just pop on the website and know if they were open or not. Some operators didn't change it on Google either. So what we did was we put an onus on operators to go in and complete a form through Airtable, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second, but operators would go in and complete a form and upload their information based on the dates that they were open, the times they were operating, the services they were delivering, and any COVID processes that guests might have to go through or expect when arriving at their specific business. So that was really, really important, because as people were really wanting to get out and explore, the common theme was, okay, well, I drove all the way up there, or I drove across the island and there wasn't any restaurants open in this town. Or, you know, I went to this one spot to do a hiking tour and I booked it, but there was nobody open. So at the end of the day, we wanted to make sure that it was really, really open and transparent for guests to see and visitors to see, to help trip plan. So if you want to flip to the next slide. So what you previously saw actually was a link right on our main page of the Visit Grossmont. So that links through to Airtable. So this was brought up through, again, those meetings with business operators that we were having back in the early days of the COVID announcement. So, you know, in April and May, we kind of looked at, well, what can we use? And Robbie Hickey was very, very integral in making this come forward, and he looked at a lot of different examples of what was being done in other parts of North America, and had seen that this was something that was probably very useful for us. So we helped to create this Airtable. So what it would allow guests to do is, once they would click on the what's open in Grossmont, what's open 2020, they would be entered into this page. And you can, as you can see up top there, you've got restaurants, a tab for restaurants, accommodations, tours and experiences, shops and galleries. The onus then goes on to the business owner to upload this information. So if they don't upload it, then it is, you know, it's completely up to them. We would assume that they were closed then. But what we did do, of course, is we reached out to anyone that was open and said, make sure that you get yourself up on this. We're going to promote the businesses that are listed here. And it was also an asset for people in the VICs, or that may be working at Parks Canada kiosks, to know, again, what was open and what was there. So you'd have something like your business name, which town you were in, which also helped for people trip planning. Some people might not realize, okay, well, there is some stuff that's open in Cowhead, or there isn't, and vice versa. So you'd list your product and services. A lot of people did operate with some reduced services last year, so that helped to let people know, okay, we're not offering these tours, but we are offering those. Your COVID info, so this was things like limited people, reduced capacity, booking only in bubbles, physical distancing, So you could list you could list specifically what you want your guests to know well ahead of time so that they were prepared when they arrived and weren't taken off guard. Again, it was very much about psychologically showing people that we were taking the bull by the horns and saying, okay, you know, we're going to show you that we can do this. We can show you that we're going to be safe, and we're going to try and keep our staff and our communities safe. Opening dates, which was really, really integral. As well as closing dates, because we did see people look to travel late fall last year, and it was really good because obviously, you know, with a reduced season, many people weren't able to stay open later. Hours of operations, days of weeks. There's also listings in terms of if you do curbside pickup or takeout, delivery, that sort of stuff. Same thing, so that's just an example of the restaurants. The same would have been done for accommodations, tours, experiences, shops, and galleries. And if you were an operator that had multiple operations, then you would just list them in each section. So we found that that was very useful. We will do this again for 2021, and we will add a box in there for Grossmont clean and safe operators. So it'll be checkboxed for that so that we can better identify those, meaning that we can better promote those businesses. And the intent is not to necessarily leave a bunch of people by the wayside. The intent is to have everybody want to join in and want to be part of it and want to talk about how we are actively working to make sure our visitor experiences are above and beyond what's just recommended. Additionally, we are looking at, okay, well, if there's things that we need to do that are above and beyond and there's costs associated with that, we are looking at ways to help businesses with their costs. You know, if this means in terms of the types of surveys they might have to have staff complete, or developing the survey that they would send out to their tour or to their guests pre-tour, you know, working to help develop those so that the business doesn't incur additional costs. So overall, we do feel it was a success for 2020. We would love to not have to do any of this for 2021, as I'm sure many of us wish we could just kind of go back to 2019. But we do see this as a long-term project into 22, into 23 for sure. And part of that is because we're still going to look at, you know, what does travel trade look at? What does international markets start to look for? And if somebody's coming from Germany or France or the US, in many ways, while we are a remote area of Canada, Atlantic Canada in general, the focus is they really want to have confidence that that operator is going to be exceeding the expectations in terms of health and safety guidelines. And it also means that if travel trade partners are looking at booking multiple operators to deliver a package, they want to know that it's going to feel cohesive along that visitor journey, and visitors are not going to all of a sudden have this red flag jump up and this restaurant be completely not adhering or just really not hitting the mark when it comes to the expectation that's going to be out there in the public. So, you know, we have seen obviously some operators are just, you know, they just want to get open and they're kind of, let's move things forward. But there is a process to this that I think we're all trying to work towards. I do feel that a project like this, while this is focused on Grossmont, I think that this is very, very much relatable to any Atlantic Canadian province or region within other parts of Newfoundland and whatnot. I don't think that if we were to, if people were to replicate this, that it would make I think it would bring more cohesiveness to our area as opposed to the all Atlantic area, to all Atlantic Canada. Why? Because when you look at travel trade, when you look at, as we move forward, when guests come to Atlantic Canada, they don't just visit one province. They tour around multiple provinces. So this is the power of if we have it in multiple areas, or even if, you know, the provinces decide to come down and add this to the TAP program or add it to a sustainability program. I think that in the future, it bodes well for us to be looking as professional and to be delivering as high quality of a product as possible moving forward. Every guest is going to count as we try to come out of this. Next slide, I think that's it. Yeah. So love to open it up, have some chats with you guys, some thoughts, some ideas. I was hoping to have somebody here even from the Bonavista area, because I had chats with Marika Gao about this sort of stuff. But yeah.
Ian, given I guess what we've learned from 2020, and I think when we started our season, we didn't have to mask up. We didn't have lots of cases, so it was something that we were watching on TV that existed elsewhere. Now that we've all, in every one of our Atlantic provinces, have really gone through massive lockdowns and all of this, how much more important do you think it is for 2021, given the mindset of many of our travelers, even our local markets, is it for this type of program for regions in Atlantic Canada?
I think that the reality of it has really rung home in a way that maybe last year every operator didn't invest as much as they will now, probably, in even just the health and safety equipment. So, was I going to rush out last year and get masks that were branded or masks that had some sort of significance to who and what we are as a business? No, not necessarily. I was going to, get what we kind of needed to make sure that we were adhering. But at this point now, the people that bedazzled their masks or put a brand on their mask or came up with a really good way of showing that behind that mask there was a smile and a person. I think that those sorts of things we're going to be re-looking at because this is not going to go away, mask wearing, for the next year or two. Really hope it would. I can only imagine those in the restaurant industry. Your smile sells a lot and makes a lot of people a lot of tips in many ways. It's your personality. So, looking forward, I think that, looking at what you do invest in and how this will lead to a comfort level of coming to Atlantic Canada. Many people are like, they want to get out of those big areas. We've never been the Banffs and the Jaspers. We've always been those removed, remote national parks and those rural areas. So I do feel that we will do really well, but I think that if we're not well prepared to handle that, then we're going to see some challenges along the way. And this will also add value to your bottom line. When explaining to them that we are going above and beyond, they'll value that. And looking to buy local and encourage the engagement in these areas, I do feel that, we will be better off once we come out to the other side.
I think one of the key things that we saw from this was that level, once again, I keep using that word psychological, but I think, thinking through what we needed to do for our guests and what we needed to do for our citizens. And I think we learned lots as we went through this. And even here, when we had our lockdown in the Halifax region, it was hilarious because, 45 minutes later in Windsor, they were putting signs up, if you're from Halifax, please don't come here. I remember seeing a sign as I was traveling home in New Brunswick of, one store, if you're from the Campbellton region or Nova Scotia, please don't come in the store. It was just interesting of what you couldn't do to, I think helping people understand what you could do and being still welcoming to them without. And I think part of the problem was we just didn't understand what this whole COVID thing really was and what was it going to do to us. You're getting so many messages from the media. And I mean, everything that was being fired at us was from this insane, mess that was happening south of the border for a lot of the time. And I think it scared a lot of us into, we just don't know. So, for yourself, Nora, how important do you think it was is getting that messaging out there for folks?
Yeah, I think it was really important. I think, as you said, like there was a lot of anxiety, I think, especially when the Atlantic bubble started to open up. I think people were really unsure and a little bit fearful. And, we knew that I know one of the phrases that the Minister of Health here uses is the virus only moves when you move. So, you know, hearing those messages, people understand that that's why, you know, that's how this thing is moving around, is via people. And so I think getting that message out that there is a safe way to do this. And there is, you know, if we view it, I think that phrase of shared responsibility, if we view it as a shared responsibility, then we can feel more comfortable knowing that, you know, I'm protecting myself, you're protecting yourself. We're following these guidelines that have been put in place by, you know, people who are knowledgeable about what should be done. I think it just raises that level of comfort. And then I think having those visual things adds to that as well. So people can see that there was an effort made to try to, you know, to try to make this as comfortable as possible, knowing that there's still certain things and still a lot of things we can't do. But, you know, let's make it comfortable and let's encourage people to do everything that they can to keep everything safe. I think one of the things, just to go back to something Ian said a minute ago about masking, as Ian and I were talking about this last week, there was an example of some masks. I think it was in Ontario, but a region in Ontario had these masks printed with colorful Adirondack chairs across the top, and then it said, "How may I help you?" And they encouraged a lot of the retail and businesses to use them because, of course, you can't see that people are smiling. So when people come in, you know, you want them to know that it's okay to come to me and ask me questions, and just something simple like that, you know, really went really well for them. They got really good feedback on it. So things like that, you know, that's something that maybe we would look at doing for this year, is having something, you know, a message right there on the mask that says, you know, ask me, or, you know, talk to me about our area or something like that. I think those visual things, you know, just makes people feel a little bit better.
And I'll just add to that, the challenge, the significant challenge for this summer is people are exhausted with the requirements, but and there's there's alert fatigue, right? So if you're on your website, you know, okay, you put up this red bar and it tells about COVID, or you know, you have this nice written out stop sign even on the front door and whatnot. Just like in Facebook, where you don't look to that right side and see the ads, well, people are doing the same thing. Yes, they come in and they'll hit the sanitizer and they'll move forward to order or to have a discussion with somebody in that. But finding ways that that Atlantic Canada can show our personality and character while just making people grin at the fact that, yeah, I'm wearing a mask, but these guys get it. And you know, I think that that's a challenge that a lot of operators need to look at how they present that. And I think that that's going to be a leg up for us, because Atlantic Canada, we're always considered kind, funny, engaged people. So, you know, I think that we can take a little bit of leeway and precedent on it and how we lay it out. And I don't think anyone's really going to take offense to finding a funner, more engaging way to remind people to make sure they have their masks on, and so on and so forth. So yeah, like Trudy said, that stop sign, like, okay, we've moved past that. We need something that's just a little bit more different and shows the personality and character of your business.
Anybody have any anything from their businesses or their communities that they'd like to share of what they've done? So unmute yourself.
Rose, I see you guys used Airtable. Was that just for the area that you work in New Brunswick, or was that in larger townships?
We did it for the entire province. The reason why I say it wasn't as effective as the way you used it is we were responsible for collecting the information. So it probably wasn't kept as up to date as it should have been. And the detail that you were able to collect was phenomenal. So I've already noted that I'm sending it as a best practice out to the team as soon as I disengage. I'm actually sending the recording out as soon as it's up, John, to a lot of people, I think, that can certainly benefit from the information that you've shared with us today. So thank you so very much.
Yeah, like as I said, we did reach out to operators to make sure that, you know, within each community, we didn't want communities to be left out, because we knew there was a restaurant in every community open. We knew there was a craft shop. And so encouraging them, like, just get it up there, you know, at least it'll be there, and you can control the message that's put up, and you can pull it down if you'd like, and just let us know, and you can update it throughout the season, just by letting us know. But yeah, a big thing was communicating with them about this and letting them know that this is where people were going. Of course, the onus being on them. You know, we did have quite a few come back right away when they knew they were going to be finishing early for the season. Okay, I need to change this date. Can you pull my thing down for me or whatever? Like, we kept it top of mind, because we also attached promotion to that. And we told them that coming next year, we will do more promotion because you're part of this. And I think a lot of people genuinely got on side because they looked at Facebook and saw how many people were asking, what is open, what is open, what is open. So they said, okay, well, if we have this tool, then we can always just share this, and it shows that the region is alive, the region has things to do, you can come for a few days. So I think that that was kind of important as well.
Yes, another best practice that we did here in New Brunswick was we have a Google My Business expert within the department. And so we offered Google My Business sessions, because when we did a survey, the response came back that more than 51% of respondents said that if I go to Google My Business and you say that you're open, and I've traveled some distance to get to your restaurant or your accommodation and you're closed, I'm going to be very disappointed. And then, of course, you know the effect that that has on social media. So that was kind of another, and you referenced Google My Business as well. And we really kind of took it to that next level where we were offering it to municipalities and regions within New Brunswick, and you know, customized to the region in most cases.
Yeah, and absolutely. I'd say Newfoundland is, yeah, I mean, it's even more painful if you leave. It's painful if you leave Corner Brook and drive an hour and 15 minutes and the spot isn't open. But a lot of people learn to trip plan and call ahead. But for sure, even on Facebook, people hadn't really updated their hours. And nothing against the province, obviously, Trudy and Bev. But at the end of the day, some of that gets taken with a grain of salt, or some of it doesn't always get opened. And when it's somebody local to the area kind of saying, hey, this is something that we need you to be doing because we're trying to help promote and tell people that we're open. Yeah, people kind of, they did come along, and I was really pleased with how many operators we got from all those avenues of gifts, gift shops and stores, to restaurants, accommodations, tour experiences.
It was interesting to see, and I think, you know, our local market really surprised us how much they did actually travel, especially here on the mainland, I found. But it was interesting, I guess, how we grew over the season to sort of handle that, especially on lots of our provincial attractions that saw massive amounts. Rose, I'm thinking of the Fundy Trail Parkway. I think that had the best season ever as far as visitation. Here in Nova Scotia, the wildlife park. One of the things that we learned as we were going through this was, how do we communicate out so somebody didn't have to stay in their car for 2 hours because we had capacity issues. So it was interesting to see some of the different tools and resources that emerged out of that as well, to sort of do some of that visitor control pieces. And we were looking at that in Grossmont as well, with some different software pieces that we had talked about and kicked around. But it was just interesting to see how that progressed. I'm curious if I can pick on you, Nancy, because Nancy is in the northern part of New Brunswick and is in an area of the province which is gorgeous. I love it, in Campbellton. But sort of, you know, because it's right on the border with Quebec, and there was lots of media profile, I guess, on that Campbellton region over, you know, long stretches of time. How did you guys deal with the communication and information from the city side of things and as the destination to visitors and to your local citizens?
So we were one of the first communities, I think, in New Brunswick to have an outburst. So it targeted us right away, that people were, we don't want to go to northern New Brunswick. We don't want to go anywhere near Campbellton area. It was a very trying year, and we anticipate it'll be another trying year because, as you mentioned, we're right across the border. Like there's a bridge separating us between Quebec, so the border, so to speak, of is closed. So you can't come to New Brunswick for essential services. So you can't come just to say you're going to come and visit. So a lot of our business is normally Quebec. So it was a trying year. So to try to get people to come, we didn't do anything special. We just kind of tried to keep going, trying to keep our heads up, but it was very difficult.
Thanks. Yeah, it was just interesting to see the media. There was so much conversation around Campbellton constantly on the media, and it's always hard, you know. I know the media is there to get eyeballs on shows, but
sometimes you say no news, no bad news. Like it's always going to be good news, but sometimes we prefer not to be in the spotlight.
Good point. Jill, what about you up in Nunatsiavut? What are you guys looking at? I know, you know, lots of your visitation is generally from, you know, outside of our region, but what is the stand of the Nunatsiavut government as far as sort of communications and you know, the process of coming into that region?
Well, like this past summer, we had the Torngat Base Camp close. So that closed for visitors, but we were able to do some other work there. So even though we couldn't have visitors there, we had staff go up and they did a big drum cleanup and some like maintenance to the buildings. There wasn't normally within our communities, like during the summer months, we don't have a lot of visitors like coming and staying. Most of the visitors were coming on the boat, on the ferry. So with the ferry though, it was in the news, we had a couple from just outside of St. John's who tried to get on the boat to visit family, and they were told that they weren't allowed, that it was for locals only. So that caused so the only traffic on the boat was for, you know, people from either Upper Lake Melville or from along the coast. And I think with the flights, so we've got like the Twin Otter flights, and they can normally take, I think, 12 to 18 or 15 or something, but they were down to 6 people per flight. And in the summer months, we do have a lot of construction happening in our communities, and so like our hotels are normally booked up because of that, but there wasn't a lot of construction happening this year either. And you know, NG put out a lot of notices asking people to either like to not travel, or if they needed to isolate in Goose Bay before they went up the coast. Just because like there's a lot of like housing issues within the Nunatsiavut. So if people, you know, got the virus, it could be devastating to our communities. But like our communities now have had their second vaccine, dose of the vaccine, and so things are looking up a bit, but we're still trying to figure out what will happen this year.
Thanks. Robbie, as a business owner, and I mean, you guys you know, were a key part of the Safe and Clean. Could you talk a little bit about, I guess, the value of this Safe and Clean and the air table and all those pieces as a business owner in Grossmont?
Yeah, it was huge for us. You know, people were just really, I guess there's two sides of it. Like there's this information overload about everything COVID, and they needed like a single location to, you know, get this information. And then on the other side of it, like people were really hungry for information. So when we get phone calls and emails and social media messages and stuff, like people just had so many questions. And especially like we opened up the year and we had limited staff because we didn't think we were going to be as busy as we were. So just to give people an idea, like half of our business was completely dead. Like anything like week-long trips or backpacking trips or anything like that was completely dead for the summer. But then we do kayak tours, paddleboard tours, and Zodiac charters. So they were really busy with our staycation market. So we had limited staff to start the year. And then when somebody would call and, you know, they'd hear our voices on the other end of the phone and we had good information to offer, they'd kind of like latch onto us and like, okay, well, we'll book your kayak tour, but then like, where can we eat? And, you know, what else can we do? What hikes are open? Is this open? Is that open? So it took up a lot of our time with limited staff. So once this was implemented, it was nice to be able to tell people like, listen, just go to visit grossmont.com. There's a table there. It has everything that you need to know about the area, you know, what their COVID protocols are, you know, what their hours are, and, you know, what services they offer and that sort of thing. So yeah, that was really helpful for us. And then, you know, as it evolved a little bit over the summer when more things were added and more things for people to do, because, you know, a lot of the bigger operators were shut in Grossmont area this year. So, you know, there were limited things for people to do. So yeah, it was, you know, integral for us for the summer. So, you know, I'm really glad, you know, it worked out the way it did. Because it, you know, it really looks the same as, you know, we had in our early calls, you know, back in the early spring. Like this is what we had kind of envisioned, and the co-op did an amazing job of implementing it. And just the fact that it's going to continue on for this summer and next and possibly longer, it's really encouraging for us.
Yeah, one of the things I forgot to lean in on there too was it doesn't just list all the businesses, but when you go to the What's Open page initially, before you hop into the Airtable, Parks Canada's information is all linked there as well. So it told you what their restrictions were, what was closed, what was open. So you really did get, you know, all the private operation explanation and then all the Parks Canada information. So, and they did update that. So that was quite good throughout the summer. You know, just so many lessons learned last summer. I feel that we can't help but be better prepared for this summer and then now this variant. Anyway, it's just like we're doing well. Anyway,
Rose, you have your hand raised.
I could just share an example of a success story here in New Brunswick that I think would, and several of you have referenced it already, but something as simple as sharing a story idea, you know, an entrepreneur that has pivoted, diversified, you know, done an exceptional job on their operational plan. You know, the local media in particular, they're looking for positive news stories. And without a word of a lie, I wish I was in my office. I'm working from home today. I have a wall behind me that is peppered with news articles that I would share a story idea with a journalist on a Wednesday, and on Saturday, the article would appear. And this has been happening now for the last month and a half. So you can imagine what this journalist, I said that it's his wall of fame that is now gracing the wall of my office. But honestly, the response from the businesses, more importantly, is since 7:30 this morning, since the article ran yesterday, my phone has been ringing off the wall. This is the best English news coverage I have ever gotten. People are calling for reservations that didn't know I existed. And the comments go on and on, just simply to say that don't underestimate the positivity that even your local media can play in terms of building business. You know, making cash registers ring is basically what these articles is doing for these small mom pop operations. So just something that all of us can be doing and seeing some good results as a result of that.
Great points, Rose. You know, I think every time I've seen, even from my own mindset, when you see something like that, you know, I'm always moved to, you know, Google it to see what it's all about. And, you know, and it's funny because, you know, we've got multiple of these sessions on the go. And I think somebody last week was talking about from New Brunswick, you know, this specific business in northern New Brunswick that's just completely booked out constantly. She was trying to get a booking there for the weekend, but they've been in the news constantly about, you know, all the incredible things they've been doing. So I think these are important. For those of you who, you know, who maybe are coming from municipalities or DMOs, you know, one of the things that I'll share, and I'll allow Nora and Ian to sort of follow up on this, is that initially, you know, when we had these conversations, we realized we'd have to do, you know, a bit of the sort of heavy lifting to get things going, but we really wanted to rely on the you know, the owners and the operators to be able to, specifically that air table is key to this whole thing. But the other part was getting that communication piece. Sometimes, you know, businesses are so busy, especially in this time where they had reduced staff. It's how could we take that component on? How could we, you know, look at some of that PPP equipment side of things to bring into play? You know, we've tested tons of stuff. We bought misters. So these would be these that spray the disinfectant. So these are battery operated pieces. So, you know, Ian can talk about these, but we bought, I think, 5 or 6 of those, and we lend those out. It was primarily through our gatherings group, but we've also lent them to communities and different things. You know, once again, it was, you know, testing these pieces of equipment out. What is the sort of visual, psychological impact of it for our visitors, seeing like, you know, all of a sudden, you know, it's, you know, you're doing this, but you're also, you know, adding this other layer of these misters into this. So I think, you know, I guess what we've tried to do is look at what is out there. We know we're not perfect in any stretch of the imagination, but we also, you know, we live by that motto of, we always laugh at it, just to get some shit done. Is we got to move, we got to be going forward. We just can't throw our hands up in the air and say, oh, nobody's coming. We've got to have our destinations ready. We've got to think things through. And our local markets, you know, in some of our destinations prove to us that they will come to us. You know, if I look at what has happened in you know, in some of the mainland spots in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and PEI, it was incredible to look and see, like, there was actually too many visitors at one point, and they were overwhelming some of the locations. So, you know, I think these are the things that we have to think about, is how do we get ourselves prepared? How do we get ourselves ready? So I don't know if you want to talk about the misters at all, Ian, and what we did with those.
Yeah, no, that was really key. And I was absolutely skeptical. I was like, what is this? The price they were charging. I'm like, is this even fit to eat? It felt like an infomercial that I wasn't sure about. Granted, you know, the folks that we worked with in Corner Brook were really, really good and really laid it out for us as to the uses. Specifically, you know, I'm working with 6 and 7 hoteliers and inns, and, you know, the stress there is clearly about consumer confidence, that when they come into these rooms that they're going to be clean and it's going to be done right. No matter who was there prior to it. You know, them all realizing that all of a sudden what they used to hide in the back of house, their cleaning staff and all that, are now what they need to put in the front of house so everyone sees it. That became a real mind shift. And so these misters, we tested out 2 different models. I think now we're probably going to lean a little bit more towards a battery operated one, but they can be used throughout the room on a variety of surfaces. But they definitely helped in the way that we also provided them not to just our private operators, but to the towns. So the towns could use them on their playground equipment. They could use them in the town halls. They could use them in a variety of aspects that they needed them for. And we also even offered them to the schools, which didn't end up using them, but still, we were trying to be there and show that we were in the community trying to make things better. I think some of the images you saw from operators like Air Canada, where they would be showing people on the plane, misting the plane and doing that sort of stuff, because significant nervousness around travel. And, you know, when our chief safety, our health officer says, oh, this is travel related, I cringe every time. Yes, it's because they're generally a remote worker or something, but travel related is a hard way to do that. Laura Lee says, I'm interested in the battery. Yes, the battery operated ones. Yeah, you just charge them up and they're good for, I think, about 2 hours generally, 2.5 hours, depending on which model you do get. There are ones that will last a lot less. And the cleaning solution is biodegradable. It's rated by Health Canada, so it's not just some gimmicky spray. It's actually rated and safe. So we found that was really good. And I did just want to double back. So people like Robbie with Grossmont Adventures this spring, or well, summer, when they started doing some really exceptional content and just putting their faces out there as like, hey guys, we're open, or a local operator, that really drove a lot of people's interest to want to come to the area. And then I think because of that, a lot of other operators said, okay, well, you know what, maybe we should try and give this a go, open up the restaurant or whatnot, to help facilitate that push or that lift that we needed. And whether Robbie realizes it or not, there was a lot of operators that said they just kind of shook things off and said, let's get things going. So it was really, really great to see that and to foster and to share that there was life in the community when many other communities were very apprehensive to say they were swinging the doors open. So again, communication, and then if there's tools out there like Misters, you know, it might not be for everybody, but it did work for us.
I'm aware of the time, and I guess I just want to sort of wrap up a little bit, and then I'll see if Nora has any, and Ian have any last minute things. But you know, it's when this all started, it was sort of I always sort of laugh. We were having these conversations, you know, amongst ourselves at the GMCA, and of course we only thought it was going to be a couple of weeks, and you know, by June we'd be back into it, not really understanding this. And then as it progressed, I look back and I sort of laugh at some of the things that we came up with, but we weren't shy, let's put it that way, of reaching out to different departments provincially and federally with ideas. This is what we'd like to do. Is there funds available for this? If there was, we did tap into them. You know, we have an incredible relationship with our local member of parliament, who actually sat in on a bunch of these conversations. The Misters in particular, she was really supportive on that side of things. Parks Canada, we had, you know, incredible conversations with them on that side of things. You know, I think about all of the, I guess, the work that we put into this, and you know, I think we came together. We understood that we don't have all the answers, but we needed to move forward. And you know, we've probably invested, you know, anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 in you know, equipment and different things, which isn't a whole lot of money, you know, at the, you know, in the big scheme of things. But for a, you know, a nonprofit group, it took some effort and took some time. So I think, you know, we've started something. Thankfully, we had the municipalities and the businesses like, you know, Robbie's and Ian's that really supported this and helped to move it forward. So it's been quite an interesting process. And as I said, you know, I think even more so here in 2021, I think it's going to be a challenging year for sure, but I feel more confident that we're prepared, at least with what we learned from 2020. So any final comments from your end, Nora or Ian, that you'd like to make?
I just make a couple points that you've kind of already covered, but just to kind of reiterate, I think, you know, going into this, we knew that, you know, there was no perfect way to kind of address this whole shared responsibility, but we felt that something visual and something eye-catching was important. And, you know, we kind of, once we got that idea, the birdhouse, and we just kind of went with it. And it took a lot of work to try to figure it out logistically and how to actually put it together and how to make it easy to maintain and refill and all those kinds of things. But, you know, I think it was sort of not being afraid to take that leap and just go for it and know that we're going to learn from it as we went. And I think the other thing is in trying to figure out any of these new normal sorts of things, I think reaching out to other groups is so important. Like, you know, things like the sandbox session, of course, but, you know, those group chats that we used to have with Ian and Robbie and some others led to a lot of great ideas. And I think also now, as we're trying to navigate through, you know, what will the new season look like, you know, talking to other municipalities, other events, festivals, like I just think we've learned so much, and people are so willing to talk about it and to share. It's been really kind of eye-opening, I think, for us at the co-op to see the level of cooperation that people are willing to, and the level of sharing people are willing to do, which has been, you know, really inspiring and gives us, I think, a lot of optimism for the future for the industry, for sure.
Ian, any last words?
Yeah, who knows? This might be the summer of the new version of the Bird Box Challenge. So you got to go around and try to find them all, just to get people moving through the communities. Even a coalition of the willing reaching out to people in your area that are wanting to move forward or have ideas needs to be fostered now more than ever. You know, you're not going to get everybody around that table, but the initial first Zoom chats we were having with, you know, 5 people, 8 people, 10 people, it led to just people saying, you know what, we're here and we're going to try and survive. So pulling those people together in your community, in your area, and across the industry, or if you're an enabler, looking for those businesses that are crying out saying, we're here, we're moving forward, and really helping them is really important. It's time to kind of move away from the naysayers and just say, you know what, we're gonna make this work. Because you know, this probably won't be the last time this happens in our lifetime, and many of us are going to be in probably this for quite some time in the industry, that is. So yeah, continue to reach out, rob and duplicate. If you see a great idea and it's in a whole nother jurisdiction, whatever. I mean, that's where some of the Airtable stuff came from. But I mean, if this is duplicated in other parts of Atlantic Canada, we would be only too happy to see it, because I do feel that guests will move throughout this region for years to come, and that'll only strengthen the belief around our safety and health.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Nora.